learn from osmosis, right? We learn from just being alive and just watching what goes on around us. We learn from experience, mistakes we make, things we do well, and we hopefully try to copy the things that we do well. But why not short circuit it a little bit and have some leadership education and some courses that help our students learn what leadership is really all about, all phases of leadership. You know, I like to call leadership with a small L and leadership with a capital L. We learn leadership with a small L. Most of it we learn from our parents or from our surroundings or our families, even though I think that we can learn more of that in our education system than sometimes we give credit for. But leadership with a capital L, it would be nice to have, it's nice to have courses for students so that they can find out what other people have done and learn from other people's experience without having to have lived it themselves. And it just helps them move along on their leadership journey. So, you know, I think leadership education is critical, particularly if we're going to educate everybody in our country about leadership. Well, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family, all small business, and this was, you know, in the 50s and 60s. And so I learned from my father, and I learned from uncles and aunts who owned small retail establishments about what leadership really meant. And leadership to them was primarily serving. It was serving their people, the people that worked in their stores, and the people they called their customers, the people they were selling their products to. And so I got it that way, and I watched and I listened, and they would teach me. They would be, you know, they would talk to me about why they were doing what they were doing. I remember a story from my dad had a small mom and pop grocery store, and one day he asked me to go get some strawberries in the back of the store. So I did, and I brought them up to the front counter, and he took the strawberries and he put them into the customer's bag. And I was young, but I noticed that he hadn't rung them up. So when the customer left, I said, "Dad, you forgot to ring the strawberries up." And he looked at me and said, "Son, sometimes you don't charge for everything. I know these people are struggling right now, and I know they love strawberries. So they're not just my customers, they're my neighbors and they're my friends." And that was a great leadership lesson. Leadership is about serving. Well, I used to have this term that I used all the time, is that everybody should get to vote in the company. And primarily it was driven from my own needs, that I wanted to vote on the things that I had some knowledge about. You know, from the simplest things, I coined a different phrase, something that I thought people could understand better, and that was that the person who sweeps the floor should choose the broom. And what I was trying to say is we go out and we hire great people, and then we bring them into our organizations and we put the clamps around them. We say, "Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this." And we make them sign a page in the handbook that says if they do anything bad, you know, they're going to be hung or something like that, you know. And so I just believe that leadership was about giving people opportunities to have accountability, to grow as human beings. And that was our primary responsibility, was to help them be better people, to be more skilled at their work. And at the end of the day, that's what leadership is really about. It's about teaching. And so that's what I tried to bring to Starbucks. I never, probably in my whole life, you can count on one hand people that I thought were self-destructive, people that didn't care. Almost everybody else wanted to perform well, and it was my job to help them do it. Well, one story that happened very early on in my career, I was there about 3 months, and I was an officer of the company at that time, and I was running responsibility for running all the retail stores in North America. Well, not very many at that time. And one day I get a call from a store manager named Jim, and he was the store manager of a store up in the Broadway district in Seattle. And he had a request. He wanted to come see myself, and he wanted to come see Howard Schultz. And so I said, "Is there anything I can help you with, trying to be, you know, the good manager and take care of things and not have to burden Howard with stuff?" But he said, "No, I really need to see both of you at the same time." So I set up the meeting, and Jim showed up at the appropriate time, and we went into Howard's office, and we sat down, and I was sitting right next to Jim on a little love seat, and Howard was sitting in a chair in front of us, and we started to talk. And I'm kind of an A-type personality, so I was trying to move the conversation forward. And looking back at it, I wish I was not moving it forward so fast. And so I said, Jim, what can we do for you? And Jim said, well, I have AIDS and I'm going to die soon. Well, you could have heard a pin drop in that room. And he had had a long-term relationship with Howard Schultz because Howard had been at the company for a long time. And Howard asked him a question. Well, Jim, what can we do for you, and what does all this mean? And Jim said, well, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to work, but I'd like to work as long as I can. And Howard just looked at him and said, Jim, until you tell us you can no longer work, you have a job here at Starbucks. Now, you got to go back to those times. This was a long time ago, almost 30 years ago. We didn't know what AIDS was all about. And I remember thinking to myself, God, he's sitting right next to me. Is this catchy? And kind of an embarrassing moment as I look back at it, for myself anyway. And then Howard said, well, what are you going to do if you can't work? How are you going to support yourself? And Jim said, well, there's some agencies developing that are going to help us and give us some funds and help us find housing and stuff like that. And Howard just looked at him and said, Jim, you're part of our family. You'll get a monthly stipend as long as you're alive. Now, Starbucks was a little tiny company at that time. We were losing money. And here was the CEO telling this guy, look, we're going to pay you for not working. And then he said, Jim, what are you going to do about your health care? And Jim said the same answer, that there are people to help. And Howard said, absolutely not. You will be on our health care till you pass away. And that's the way it was with Jim. It was a great lesson for me. Here I was just starting at Starbucks. I knew right then and there I'd made the right decision of joining this company. And Jim didn't live very long, but Jim was taken care of throughout his whole life. And it was a wonderful experience, and it sent a message throughout the company. In Southern California, we had a store down in the Santa Monica area, and we used to have a customer there that the people affectionately called Big Jim. And Jim was an ex-football player, and he'd retired, and now he was living in a nursing home across the street from one of our stores. And every day, Jim would come in about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He'd order a short drip coffee and a blueberry muffin. And that was every single day Jim did that. And he would sit down in the chair, and he would banter back and forth with the baristas. And he was a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And, the people behind the counter would yell at him, hey, Jim, the Steelers suck. And Jim would yell something back at him, and they would have fun, and there was a lot of humor. And one day, 2 o'clock goes by, 3 o'clock goes by, 4 o'clock goes by, no Jim. So the people were wondering what was going on. So a barista ran across the street, took the coffee and the muffin just in case Jim was sick or something, and went to the front desk and said, where's Jim? And the front desk person a tear came down her eye, and she said, Jim passed away in the middle of the night. And so the barista went back to the store and told everybody, and of course everybody was sad about losing Jim. And a day later, one of Jim's children came into the store and asked the store manager if everybody in the store could come to Jim's funeral because they all meant so much to Jim. And the store manager figured out a way to have people work in the store, and they all went to the funeral. And when Jim would come in to get his cups of coffee and his little muffin in the bag, they used to always write little notes on the bag or on the paper. Jim, we love you. Jim, you weren't that good a football player. Something to make Jim laugh. Well, as they walked into the funeral home, here were 2 big tables. And on the tables were every cup and every bag with every note that had been written to Jim. And, the lesson I think I learned from that was that the little things matter in life. Just those little notes, the smile when you see somebody in the hallway, the hello, picking up the piece of paper on the street, doing something small for another human being. That, at the end of the game, is true leadership. It's servant leadership at its core. So, it's the little things, that make a difference. Taking care of Jim when he had AIDS, and those messages go through the company, and the message that sent about serving Big Jim and taking care of him, just writing notes to make him feel better each day. Is there anything more valuable than that? Nothing that I know of. Number 1, give trust before you get trust. Give your people trust. When they walk in that door and it's their first day on the job, you need to trust them automatically. It doesn't mean you don't help them or inspect what they're doing, but you got to trust that they'll do a good job if you help them do it. Number 2, love them. You know, love is a word we don't like to use in the business world, but love is important. I don't mean romantic love, of course. I mean the love we give to all other human beings because they are a human being. And I think it has to come from inside, from our heart. And people know when you care about them. You know, that word caring is an important word too. People don't really care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. And, you know, those three things, caring, love, and trust, are the thing that drives all relationships. And it drives relationships in the business world just like it drives relationships in our personal life. And so, you know, if you were to say what three things or three words are most important in any organization, whether it's family, whether it's business, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's the education system, those three words matter. And the actions behind those words. There are many people. I think we don't give enough credit to the people that are really doing a good job. So, you know, I grew up in the retail sphere, so I'm kind of, I tilt that way. Those are the people that I know. But Jim Senegal and Jeff Brotman, who started and founded Costco, they are two princes among men. They are so kind and helpful to their people. They stick by their people. When the public markets were trying to push them to lower their wages, they said to the public markets, if you don't like our stock, don't buy it. You know, they stood up to the principles that they believed in. So that's that's a couple of people. So another person is Bruce Nordstrom. And Bruce is one of the founding members of the family for Nordstrom's. When you walk through Nordstrom's, downtown Seattle, Nordstrom, everybody knows him by name, and he knows everybody by name. It's like a family there. And he cares about them, and they care about him. And you can feel it. You can just cut it with a knife. And the list goes on and on. A guy that started Whole Foods, John Mackey, kind of a different dude, right? Libertarian in his politics, but he's a guy that could, if he wanted to and was greedy, could have been a billionaire. But he didn't want to be. He wanted to do good things for his people. So he gave his people tremendous responsibility. And he's another guy, when you walk through the stores, everybody knows him and he cares about him. So, you know, those are the kind of people that I think add real value to the world. By the way, John Mackey started an organization called Conscious Capitalism, which is an attempt to get companies to understand that capitalism isn't just about earning money. Capitalism is about serving people. The toughest thing is to learn to lead yourself. That's the most difficult thing. The rest of it is easy. If you learn how to lead yourself effectively, if you learn how to manage that board of directors that's talking to you, the one that sits on your shoulders, that's yapping at you all the time, those voices that you hear, if you learn how to lead those members of your board effectively, the ones that are telling you, hey, you're a great guy, the one that's telling you you're a bum, and learn how to manage that all together, you will have a fulfilling life. It may not always be happy, but it will be fulfilling. You will suffer all the things that we all do. You will have joy and pain and agony and disappointment and defeat and joy and happiness. And that's what makes a fulfilling life. But you got to learn how to manage that board. And so I say the most important person you're ever going to have to lead in your life is you. The first book is titled It's Not About the Coffee. And that was a compilation of my experiences in the business world with not only Starbucks examples, but examples from other organizations that I've worked with. And it's all the things that I believe in terms of leadership and how to develop oneself. And, you know, it's obvious when I say it's not about the coffee. The question is, well, what is it about? Well, it's about people. And everything we do in life is about people. There is no job that any of us will have that isn't about serving another human being. You name the job, I'll make a connection for you between serving another human being and yourself. Whether you're making widgets that go into a printing press that prints newspapers that get delivered to somebody's house to inform or entertain them, all the way up to being a social worker or an educator. It's always about serving another person, or even if it's about serving a cup of coffee, it's about serving another human being. So that book really encapsulates all of that. The second book, the one that just came out this week, is called The Magic Cup. And it's a fable about a leader who wants to be a CEO of a company, and he works for another company, and his boss is one of those unusual and unique bosses that encourages him to grow. And she spots this other job, a chance for him, his name is Steadfast, to be a CEO in another company. And she encourages him to go take a look. And he gets offered the job, and it's the story of his first day on the job, and it's kind of a cross between Harry Potter and business. And I think it's a fun little book to read. It's about values and virtues and what it takes in this world to be a great leader. I think life is what you make of it. You know, what you put into your life, what you put into the magic cup, what you put into your cup is what you get out. If you put kindness and caring and love into that cup, your cup not only fills, but it grows in size. And if you think about that, that's what happens. When there's joy in your life and you're helping other people, don't you feel better about yourself? Isn't there an energy that you just can't quite explain? And on the opposite side of that, when you put greed and blind ambition and uncaring into your cup, what happens? Your cup shrinks. It's just how you feel about yourself, too. And the cup won't hold anything. And you can put all the material things you want in your cup. Your cup will, as long as they're not ill-gotten, your cup will take every material thing you want to put into it. But just like in life, the more material things you put into it, the smaller each one becomes. If you love cars or you love watches, you buy one watch, God, you love that watch every day. You get up in the morning and you're proud of that watch. And then you buy 2 watches, and now you don't know which one to wear. And then you buy 3 watches, and so on and so on and so on. And they become less meaningful to you. And that's what it is in life. So, be careful what you put into your cup.